there is there's a heart and lung up here. There's like a trachea esophagus thing. So we don't have to know all of that. But actually, one thing we have to know right up here, this is the, something's twisted, not quite right here. It's kind of backwards, I'm not sure why. But anyway, this is it's like the Adam's apple, and that's the voice box. So this is the trachea, but behind the trachea, esophagus. So you can kind of see one opening into the trachea, and then the esophagus is the other opening. I'll put it in the esophagus since that's the one we're talking about. And then the esophagus then is the softer tube. You see two tubes. Here's the trachea. It's firm and open. Here's the esophagus. It's actually cut a little, but it's flimsy and squishy. Esophagus, trachea, esophagus. Right there. And it goes down all the way under the liver. Here's the diaphragm, by the way. That would separate the abdominal from the thoracic cavity. The only organ we need to see up here is the esophagus. Okay, moving down, so we follow the esophagus. It would go all the way. You see this little neck area.
The other way you can actually see better.
Right through the diaphragm. Right here. This is then the stomach. It's a little hard to see because it kind of just blends in. It's kind of triangular shaped. Here's like the fundus. This little folded area is the fundus, but here's stomach. It's about triangular shape, kind of. This is large intestine. We'll get to that later. We can kind of see it's ripping off a little bit. This dark green flappy thing that I'm kind of bracing with my fingers is the large intestine. Above it, this triangular piece with the little fundus over here, and then the esophagus is attaching right where it all kind of comes together by the liver and the diaphragm. This is stomach. Did everybody see? Stomach. Liver, gallbladder, nice falciform ligament. Separating the monstrous right lobe from the rather small left lobe. There's the gallbladder. So everything I'm naming is fair game. You want to mark it on your blue sheet so you know. He said esophagus. We now added stomach. We already had gallbladder and liver, but we also can see it here. This is a better view of the falciform ligament, which I know we saw before, but a better view of it here. Ready to move on? Did everybody see? Okay. From the stomach, where would we move on into? Something you wrote down, I believe, on your blue sheet. The duodenum. And you see that right here. It gets a little tubular and green because the bile's starting to come in. It even permeates the wall of the duodenum. Once you see this dark green, that's, here's the stomach. And pyloric sphincter, you can feel it's right in there. It's firm and muscular. So the duodenum, it's actually, I think, is a problem here. This is the duodenum. It's the best part to see it. Coming out of the stomach into duodenum. Now, the rest of the small intestine you do have to know, so that's duodenum part, but the general part of the small intestine is this rather narrow, kinky, convoluted tubule. Everybody see that? Small intestine with the accompanying, what's that connective tissue called? Mesentery. The mesentery. Kind of like a spider web, I don't know, like a hand fan, Chinese fan. I don't know if this is all mesentery. You really don't see the blood vessels quite so much. Of course, maybe it's because it's been dead for probably like 5 or 10 years, but anyway, the mesentery. So small intestine and the mesentery. Then the end of the small intestine comes here. It's the ileum. And then what's this thing, the big pouchy thing? Cecum. Is cecum on the list?
Yes.
Okay, so you have to know cecum. It's a little gross. It's still kind of full. And then it's a little rough here, but we can kind of see some, say that we got an ascending. The transverse is that part that kind of goes right under the stomach. It's very pouchy and mushy and icky. Anyway, this is the transverse, and I think all you need is it just large intestine. So you need cecum, large intestine, which could be ascending. This is probably a good spot to point it. Then it narrows on the descending, right here at the splenic flexure. It gets real skinny. It gets real skinny right where my fingers are. It's like, how did anything even get through that? It's like a huge bottleneck when it was so, huge and large before. Anyway, this is the descending, and here's where we see some Hostra. You can see about 3 of these pouches, 1, 2, 3. So those are Hostra there. 1, 2, 3 or so. These little pouches. They look kind of like a turd, because that's what they're doing. They're packing it in. Okay, so that's those Hostra. Pardon me if are you recording this? We'll put it on YouTube. I didn't say that. Okay, so Hostra. I think is Taenia coli on there?
Yes.
Okay, we can cross that off. It's really not in any good shape and hard to see. We then get down to the sigmoid colon, which really does hold its shape. See that little S, that little curve there? You don't have to know sigmoid colon. Note the fatty appendices, these epiploic appendages, these fatty tags whose purpose is unclear. But anyway, you do have to know rectum. When it straightens out here is the rectum. You don't necessarily have to know sigmoid colon. If the pointer's here, it's still just colon. Pointer's there, Hostra. Pointer's here, rectum. Rectum. The anus is the opening. Don't call that the anus. That's a rectum. That's like 3rd grade. You can mix those up, but not anymore. The anus is the opening in the, at the end of the rectum.
What is the mesocolon like?
Well, you can cross it off, if that's what you're really asking. It's on here, but it's just in little fragments and pieces, so it's kind of icky. Like this would be some mesocolon, but it's not like any good examples or anything, just this connective tissue attached to the colon. So, no mesocolon, but you do need to know rectum. So here's some things you can cross off. Tongue and salivary glands. We see the esophagus is fair game, stomach fair game, small intestine is, we saw that. Also mesentery, large intestine, we saw it all over the place. Cecum, that pouchy sac. Rectum, the straight part. Hostra, the pouches. Cross off Taenia coli. Cross off mesocolon. Liver's good. Falciform ligaments good. Gallbladder's good. The ducts, probably not on this one, but we've seen them on the others, and you're going to see them on the next thing I show you as well. So, and then the right-in one of duodenum. Is the liver on there? Yeah. Okay, so are we all clear on the blue sheet? So you know what you have to know.